There are numbers in baseball that carry weight beyond statistics. Numbers that represent something larger than a single player's performance. Numbers that speak to consistency, to durability, to the kind of sustained excellence that separates the great from the legendary. Numbers that, once they reach a certain threshold, stop belonging only to the player achieving them and start belonging to the sport itself. 52 games. 52 consecutive games in which Shohei Ohtani has reached base. 52 times stepping into the batter's box against the best pitchers in the world, under the full weight of preparation and strategy and deliberate effort to stop him, and 52 times finding a way. A hit. A walk. A hit by pitch. Whatever it required. However it had to happen. 52 games of relentless, unbroken presence on the base paths. And now, for the first time since this streak began, it is genuinely, seriously in danger. Not because Ohtani has lost something. Not because his swing has developed a flaw that opposing pitchers have identified and begun to exploit. Not because age or fatigue or the physical accumulation of a long season has begun to take its inevitable toll. Because of a rule. A rule that bears his name. A rule that was created, its critics argue, specifically to accommodate his singular existence in this sport. A rule that the legends of baseball, men whose opinions carry the full authority of careers spent at the highest level, are now publicly, furiously demanding be abolished. The Ohtani Rule. And the question being asked in every corner of the baseball world right now is one that cuts far deeper than a streak or a rule or even a single player's career. Is baseball bending itself out of shape to protect one man? And if it is, what does that mean for the integrity of a sport that has always insisted, at least in its public mythology, that no one is above the game? Stay with us. Because the answer to those questions is more complicated, more honest, and more revealing about the true nature of professional sports than anyone currently shouting on either side of this debate is willing to admit. To understand why this number matters so much, you have to understand what a consecutive on-base streak actually represents in the context of modern baseball. This is not a simple statistic. It is not the product of a hot month where everything clicks and every ball finds a gap and every count works in the hitter's favor. A streak of this length, 52 games, sustained across different pitching matchups, different stadiums, different weather conditions, different moments of physical fatigue and competitive pressure, is the product of something that cannot be explained by talent alone. It requires an approach. A philosophy at the plate that prioritizes contact and discipline over the kind of aggressive, all-or-nothing swing decisions that produce highlight reel moments but also produce the strikeouts and cold stretches that interrupt streaks before they ever reach significant numbers. It requires consistency of preparation. The same deep study of opposing pitchers that Ohtani is known for, not just on the days when he feels sharp and motivated, but on the days when the body is tired and the mind wants a shortcut and every instinct is telling you to simplify. The streak demands that you never simplify. That you bring the full version of yourself to the plate every single time, in every single game, regardless of what the scoreboard says or what your body is telling you. And it requires something that is hardest to quantify and easiest to underestimate, the mental durability to carry a streak without letting the streak itself become a distraction. To know the number, feel the weight of the number, and then set it aside completely the moment the first pitch of each new game is released. Ohtani has done all of this for 52 consecutive games. And the streak is now under threat from a direction that nobody predicted when it began. For those who have not followed the technical details of this controversy, a brief explanation is necessary. The rule in question emerged from the specific and genuinely unprecedented situation that Ohtani's two-way capability created for baseball scheduling and roster management systems. As both a pitcher and a hitter of elite caliber, Ohtani exists in a category that the sport's existing rules were never designed to accommodate. The traditional designated hitter rule operates on a simple principle. A player bats in place of the pitcher. The pitcher pitches. They are two different people performing two different functions. The rule exists in a clean, binary space. Ohtani collapsed that binary. When he pitches and hits in the same game, the question of what happens to the designated hitter spot when he leaves the mound, when his day as a pitcher is over but his day as a hitter is not, required the league to make a decision about something the rulebook had never contemplated. The decision they made became known informally as the Ohtani Rule. It allowed him to remain in the game as a hitter after his pitching performance concluded, without the team losing the designated hitter spot entirely. A specific accommodation for a specific situation that a specific player had created simply by being capable of things no previous player had been capable of at the same level simultaneously. For years, this rule existed in the background. Technically notable. Practically significant for roster construction. But not the subject of widespread controversy because the competitive implications, while real, had not yet produced a moment dramatic enough to bring them fully into public view. That changed when the streak reached 52 games. And the legends of baseball decided they had stayed quiet long enough. When veterans of the sport speak publicly about rules and fairness and the integrity of competition, the baseball world listens. Not always in agreement. Not always with the deference that previous generations might have received automatically. But with attention. Because men who played this game at its highest level for decades have earned the right to be heard when they raise concerns about the direction the sport is taking. What they are saying about the Ohtani Rule is not subtle. The core argument, stripped of its most heated rhetoric, is this: competitive integrity requires that rules apply equally to everyone. That the accommodations made for any single player, however extraordinary that player may be, create a structural advantage that other teams and other players do not have access to. And that when a rule bears a single player's name, when the accommodation is so specific that it cannot be separated from the individual it was designed to serve, something fundamental about the relationship between a player and the game has been violated. The more emotional version of this argument, the version being delivered with the kind of barely contained fury that only true believers in a sport's traditions can produce, goes further. Stop giving him special treatment. These are words that land differently depending on where you stand. To those who share the concern, they are a principled defense of competitive fairness. To those who disagree, they sound like something less principled, like the frustration of people who cannot stop what Ohtani is doing through legitimate competition and are therefore attempting to stop it through institutional pressure. Both interpretations contain truth. And that is precisely what makes this debate so genuinely difficult to resolve. Now we arrive at the question that sits at the center of this entire storm. Is Ohtani's career actually in jeopardy? The word jeopardy is doing significant work in the current coverage of this situation. It implies a threat of ending. Of permanent damage. Of something being taken away that cannot be recovered. And it is important to examine that word honestly rather than simply accepting it because it produces the emotional response that drives engagement. The streak is in jeopardy. That much is real. If the rule is modified or eliminated, if the accommodation that has allowed Ohtani to remain in games as a designated hitter after his pitching performance concludes is removed, the conditions under which the streak has been built change. Scheduling implications change. The number of games in which he can pursue the streak changes. But is the career itself in jeopardy? The honest answer is more nuanced than either side of this debate is currently offering. Ohtani's value to his team does not live or die with a rule. His hitting ability is not dependent on the Ohtani Rule. His presence in the lineup, his preparation, his capacity to change games with a single swing, none of these things disappear if the rule is modified. What changes is the framework within which he operates. And framework changes, for a player of Ohtani's adaptability, are not the same as career threats. But there is a deeper concern that the most thoughtful voices in this conversation are raising. And it has nothing to do with the rule itself. Here is what the rule debate is obscuring. The reason the question of Ohtani's career longevity is being raised at all, the reason the word jeopardy is present in any serious conversation about his future, is not primarily about rules or accommodations or the opinions of legends who feel the sport is bending inappropriately. It is about what doing what Ohtani does costs a human body over time. Pitching at an elite major league level is one of the most physically demanding activities in professional sport. The stress placed on the arm, the shoulder, the entire kinetic chain from the foot to the fingertips, in the delivery of a major league pitch, repeated dozens of times in a single outing, across dozens of outings in a season, year after year, is extraordinary. The injury history of elite pitchers is not a coincidence. It is a predictable consequence of asking human bodies to do something they were not originally designed to do with that kind of regularity and force. Hitting at an elite major league level is separately demanding. The rotational forces involved in a major league swing, the visual processing required to pick up pitch spin and make adjustment decisions in fractions of a second, the physical and mental recovery required between games, these are not trivial demands even for a player who only hits. Ohtani does both. The streak, 52 games of consistent on-base performance, is not just a testament to his skill. It is a testament to a physical and mental resilience that exists at the outer boundary of what is humanly possible. And the concern about its continuation is, at its most honest, a concern about whether that boundary can be maintained indefinitely. The rule debate, in this light, is almost a distraction. The real question is not whether baseball is giving Ohtani special treatment. The real question is whether Ohtani is giving his body something it may eventually be unable to sustain. It is worth pausing here to extend genuine charity to the legends who are speaking out. Because underneath the fury, underneath the demands to stop the special treatment, underneath the rhetoric that has made this debate feel more heated than productive, there is a concern that is not entirely cynical or self-interested. These are men who love baseball, who devoted their lives to a sport that has its own traditions, its own internal logic, its own way of measuring greatness that has been developed and refined over more than a century of competition. When they see those traditions being adjusted to accommodate a single player, however extraordinary that player may be, the discomfort they feel is not simply jealousy or resentment. It is the discomfort of people who believe the thing they love is changing in ways they didn't consent to and can't fully control. That feeling is human. That concern is real. Where it becomes problematic is when it tips from principled concern into something that looks more like an attempt to limit a player whose greatness cannot be contained through normal competitive means. When the demand to abolish the rule conveniently coincides with a historic streak that the rule's existence is helping to enable, when the timing of the outrage aligns so precisely with the achievement being threatened, the purity of the motivation becomes harder to defend. Baseball has always changed. It has always adapted. Rules have always been modified to reflect the realities of who is playing the game and what they are capable of. The legends know this. They played in eras that looked different from the ones before them. They benefited from changes that traditionalists of their day resisted. The question is not whether change is acceptable. The question is whether this specific change serves the game or diminishes it. 52 games. The number sits there, patient and enormous, waiting to find out what happens next. MLB is reviewing the concerns raised about the rule. The process is the process, deliberate, institutional, moving at the speed of organizations that understand that the decisions they make in moments of public pressure tend to be worse than the decisions they make when the pressure has passed and clarity returns. The legends are still talking. Their voices are loud and their platforms are significant, and the sport is listening even when it disagrees. And Ohtani is preparing for his next game. This is the part that never changes. This is the part that all of the noise, the rule debate, the career jeopardy headlines, the furious legends, the institutional reviews, cannot touch. The preparation continues. The routine continues. The work that built the streak and has sustained the streak and will determine whether the streak continues exactly as it always has. He did not build 52 games of consecutive on-base performance by thinking about rules. He built it by thinking about pitchers. By studying tendencies and patterns and sequences until the information became instinct. By standing in the batter's box with a clarity of purpose that external controversy has never once managed to disturb. If the rule changes, he will adapt. He has adapted before. He will adapt again. Because adaptation is not a crisis response for Ohtani, it is simply part of the process. If the streak ends, it will end the way all streaks eventually end, not with a failure of preparation or a failure of character, but with the simple mathematical reality that nothing lasts forever in baseball. Not records. Not streaks. Not even the resistance of those who cannot accept that the game they love is capable of producing something they have never seen before. What cannot end, what the rule debate and the Legends fury and the career jeopardy headlines cannot touch, is what Ohtani actually is. 52 games is a number. What produced those 52 games is something that no rule change can eliminate. It lives in the preparation. In the discipline. In the quiet, relentless, daily commitment to being ready for whatever comes next. And whatever comes next, Ohtani will be ready. He always is.